The first snowflake of the season sparked violet in Nadia Winter's mind, a flash of color that only she could see. As the meteorologist tracked the unusual weather patterns from her remote monitoring station in the Norwegian wilderness, each falling crystal painted a different hue across her consciousness, an effect of her synesthesia that had made her both a brilliant scientist and an outsider among her peers. The northern lights shimmered overhead, but tonight they moved differently, writhing with an almost desperate energy that made Nadia's instruments spike with unprecedented readings. She adjusted her thick wool sweater, breath fogging in the cramped observation dome as she cross-referenced the data with historical records. Something was wrong. The aurora shouldn't dance like this in October, and the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in less than an hour. A sound like breaking glass tore through the night, followed by a flash that turned the snow-covered landscape into day. Nadia's synesthesia exploded with tastes of copper and symphony of colors that nearly brought her to her knees. When her vision cleared, she saw it, a crystalline shape plummeting from the sky, trailing particles that glowed like stardust. The object crashed less than a kilometer from her station, and despite every safety protocol she'd learned over her years of isolated research, Nadia found herself pulling on her extreme weather gear. Her colleagues in Oslo would want a report, and she couldn't risk someone else reaching the site first. Whatever had fallen wasn't a meteor, the readings were unlike anything in her database. The trek through knee-deep snow left her muscles burning, but the closer she got to the impact site, the more her synesthesia sang with strange new sensations. The crash had carved a pristine crater in the ice, steam rising from its edges in the frigid air. At its center lay what appeared to be a capsule of some sort, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid crystal. "Hello?" Nadia called out, her voice muffled by her thermal mask. "Is anyone there?" The capsule's surface rippled, and a section dissolved away like ice under warm water. From within emerged a figure that made Nadia question her sanity, humanoid in shape, but with skin that caught the aurora's light and fractured it like a prism. Its eyes were solid silver, and patterns of light pulsed beneath its transparent outer layer in rhythm with what she assumed was a heartbeat. The being staggered, clearly injured, and Nadia's scientific caution warred with her human compassion. Before she could decide which would win, it spoke in perfect, albeit accented, English. "Please," it said, its voice resonating with harmonics that tasted like honey in her mind. "I mean no harm. I am Kestrel, scholar of the crystalline concordat. Or, what remains of it." Nadia took a step forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "I'm Dr. Nadia Winters. Are you hurt?" Kestrel's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a grimace. "My containment field is damaged. This atmosphere, the pressure is different from my homeworld. I need shelter, somewhere I can repair my environmental systems." The rational part of Nadia's mind screamed that this was how horror movies started, taking mysterious aliens back to isolated research stations. But as she watched Kestrel struggle to remain upright, she saw something in those silver eyes that resonated with her own experiences of isolation and difference. "My station has an airlock," she found herself saying. "We can adjust the pressure gradually. I have tools, medical supplies. You would help me?" Kestrel's surprise carried notes of deep violet in Nadia's perception. "Even though I am different?" Nadia smiled behind her mask. "I've spent my life seeing colors in sounds and tasting shapes in the air. Different is relative." As she helped the crystalline being through the snow, Nadia's instruments continued to record the anomalous aurora overhead. She didn't know it yet, but this night would mark the beginning of a change far greater than any weather pattern she'd ever studied. The true storm was just beginning, one that would challenge everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. Back at the station, as she helped Kestrel adjust to Earth's atmosphere, the alien scholar shared fragments of a terrible truth. Their meeting was no accident. Something had followed Kestrel across the stars, something that had already destroyed one world and would not stop until it had consumed all others in its path. The aurora's strange dance was just the first sign of its approach. As the night deepened and Kestrel's stories painted images of crystal cities and star-spanning civilizations in Nadia's mind, she realized that her lonely vigil in the Arctic night had suddenly become humanity's first line of defense against an approaching darkness. And somehow, she knew that her unique way of perceiving the world might be the key to understanding the threat they faced. The question was, would anyone believe them before it was too late? The abandoned biodome rose from the Norwegian tundra like a ghostly cathedral, its frost-covered panels catching the perpetual twilight of the Arctic winter. 3 weeks had passed since Kestrel's arrival, and Nadia had convinced her superiors that the strange readings were merely atmospheric anomalies, buying them precious time. The biodome, a failed international science initiative project from the previous decade, would serve as their sanctuary and laboratory. Nadia watched as Kestrel pressed a crystalline hand against a withered plant, his silver eyes dimming in concentration. Where his fingers touched, a soft luminescence spread through the dead tissue, and slowly, impossibly, brown leaves turned green again. The sight triggered a cascade of golden sparkles in her synesthetic vision. The process is similar to how we maintained our crystal gardens back home, Kestrel explained, his voice carrying undertones that tasted like mint in Nadia's perception. Life force is universal, whether it flows through organic matter or crystalline matrices. And you think understanding this connection might help us prepare for what's coming? Nadia asked, recording readings on her tablet. They had converted half the biodome into a monitoring station, filling it with both her meteorological equipment and strange devices Kestrel had salvaged from his crash site. The void hunger doesn't just consume matter, Kestrel said, moving to another plant. It devours energy patterns, the very essence of life itself. My people. His voice faltered, and Nadia felt the familiar taste of ash that accompanied his memories of loss. We thought our crystalline nature would protect us. We were wrong. Nadia placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, marveling at how the surface felt both solid and fluid beneath her touch. Over the past weeks, she'd learned to read the subtle shifts in his crystalline form that betrayed his emotions. Right now, his usual prismatic sheen had dulled to an opaque white, grief made visible. Tell me about them, she said softly. About your world. Kestrel's form rippled, and suddenly the air around them filled with dancing lights, like aurora brought indoors. Through some property of his crystalline biology, he was projecting memories, images of towering cities that seemed grown rather than built, of beings like himself moving through gardens where crystal flowers chimed in harmonic resonance. We called our world Lamaria, he said, his voice rich with bittersweet harmonics. Our cities grew from the living crystal of the planet itself. We were scholars, artists, scientists, we thought ourselves advanced enough to face any challenge. The images shifted, showing darkness creeping across the crystal landscapes, cities going dark one by one. We never imagined something could exist that fed on the very essence of our civilization. Nadia's synesthesia translated his grief into deep blues and the taste of sea salt. She understood loss. Her own isolation had begun when her parents died in a climbing accident, leaving her to navigate her unique perception of the world alone. That solitude had driven her to this remote posting, where her strangeness wouldn't bother anyone. We're not going to let that happen here, she said firmly, turning to her monitors. The atmospheric changes you detected, they're following a pattern. If we can predict where the void hunger will manifest. A sudden alarm cut through her words, its blare tasting like copper on her tongue. One of their perimeter sensors had triggered. On the security feed, they saw a group of vehicles approaching the biodome, black SUVs with government markings. Someone must have connected the dots, Nadia muttered, quickly shutting down their more obvious experiments. Kestrel, we need to. But the crystalline being was already moving, his form shifting to blend with the shadows and restored plants. They had practiced this, knowing discovery was inevitable. What they hadn't expected was for it to happen so soon. The biodome's main airlock cycled, and footsteps echoed on metal gratings. A woman's voice called out, Dr. Winters. This is Director Reese from the Special Sciences Division. We need to discuss your recent reports. Nadia took a deep breath, tasting the familiar metallic edge of fear. Everything depended on how she handled the next few minutes. They needed allies, not enemies, but trust had to be earned carefully. Her fingers brushed against the small crystal shard Kestrel had given her, a piece of himself that let them communicate silently across distances. "Welcome to the Gardens Project, Director," Nadia called back, forcing confidence into her voice. "I was just about to make some remarkable breakthroughs about atmospheric energy patterns. Would you like to see?" As she moved to meet the newcomers, Nadia felt Kestrel's reassuring presence in her mind through the crystal shard. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The garden they had built was more than just a hiding place, it was the seed of hope, a proof that different forms of life could not just coexist, but flourish together. And perhaps that understanding would be the key to saving both their worlds from the darkness that hunted across the stars. Director Reese's research team had occupied the biodome for a week, their presence a constant pressure that tasted like iron shavings on Nadia's tongue. They claimed to be studying atmospheric anomalies, but their equipment looked more suited for containment than research. Nadia caught them scanning for energy signatures that matched Kestrel's crystalline biology, though they didn't know exactly what they were looking for. In the hidden lower levels of the biodome, accessed through maintenance tunnels that the government team hadn't discovered, Nadia found Kestrel examining their deep space monitoring equipment. The crystalline being's form pulsed with rapid patterns of light, his equivalent of agitation. "They're getting closer," he said without turning, his voice carrying harmonics that painted streaks of red across Nadia's vision. "Both threats. The human collectors who would cage me for study, and the void hunger that would devour us all." Nadia moved to stand beside him, studying the readings. The upper atmosphere showed increasing disturbances, tears in reality that her synesthesia translated into tastes of ozone and flashes of ultraviolet that shouldn't be possible to perceive. "Director Reese isn't just from the Special Sciences Division, is she?" "No." Kestrel's surface rippled with darker patterns. "I've accessed their encrypted communications. They call themselves the Stellar Containment Initiative. They've been tracking unusual phenomena for decades, collecting anything they deem exceptional." His silver eyes met hers. "Like your gift of synesthesia. They've been watching you longer than you know." The revelation sent a chill through Nadia that had nothing to do with the Arctic cold. "That's why they placed me at this remote station. They were using me as bait for something like you." "Indeed." A new voice spoke from the shadows, carrying notes that tasted like aged whiskey. Both Nadia and Kestrel spun to face an older man emerging from a hidden entrance neither had known existed. His weathered face bore a neat silver beard, and his eyes held both wisdom and wariness. "Though I don't believe anyone expected quite such an extraordinary visitor." "Professor Jensen," Kestrel said, surprising Nadia. "Your reputation reached even my world, before its fall." The xenobiologist who argued for peaceful contact rather than containment. The old professor smiled sadly. "And was quietly dismissed from the initiative for my troubles. I've been operating independently since then, watching, waiting for a chance to prove that cooperation is possible." He turned to Nadia. "Your synesthesia isn't just a gift of perception, Dr. Winters. It's an evolutionary response to changes in Earth's electromagnetic field, changes caused by the same force that destroyed Kestrel's world." Nadia's mind raced, her gift translating the professor's words into patterns of indigo and the taste of thunder. "The auroras, the atmospheric disturbances, they're like immune responses from Earth itself?" "Precisely." Jensen moved to their monitoring equipment, his fingers dancing over the controls with familiar ease. "And you can perceive them because humanity is starting to adapt. But Director Reese and her masters don't want adaptation, they want control. They believe they can capture and weaponize these changes. They'll doom this world if they try," Kestrel said, his crystalline form darkening. "The void hunger cannot be controlled." He stopped suddenly, his entire body becoming translucent with alarm. "Something's wrong." Nadia felt it too, a discordant note in her synesthetic perception, like shattered glass across her nerves. The monitoring equipment erupted with warnings as reality itself seemed to twist above the biodome. Through the frosted panels, they could see the aurora writhing in impossible patterns, tasting of metal and despair. "They're attempting to generate a controlled breach," Jensen said grimly, reading the data. "Reese must have discovered more about the anomalies than we thought. They're trying to create a small opening to study the void between realities." "No," Kestrel's voice carried harmonics of pure terror. "They don't understand. Any breach, no matter how small, will draw its attention. We have to stop them." But even as they rushed toward the upper levels, Nadia's synesthesia overwhelmed her with tastes and colors she had no words for, the sensory equivalent of a scream across dimensions. Above them, the aurora torn open like a wound in the sky, and through it came something that devoured light itself. Professor Jensen pulled them into a service corridor as emergency sirens blared. "The initiative has protocols for containing breaches, but they won't work against this. We need something else, a combination of Kestrel's crystalline energy manipulation and Nadia's ability to perceive and interpret dimensional frequencies." "The garden," Nadia gasped, as inspiration struck like lightning. "The plants Kestrel restored, they're not just alive, they're connected to Earth's own energy field. If we can use them as a conduit." The building shook as darkness began to seep through its seams. They could hear screaming from the upper levels as initiative personnel encountered something their containment protocols had never prepared them for. Time was running out. "Together then," Kestrel said, extending one crystalline hand to Nadia while reaching for Jensen with the other. "Let us show both humanity and the void that life's true power lies not in walls and weapons, but in the connections we forge." As they raced toward the garden chamber, Nadia felt hope rising like dawn against the encroaching night. They had created something unique in this hidden place, a bridge between worlds. Now it was time to see if that bridge could hold back the darkness itself. The garden chamber had become a battlefield of light and shadow. Kestrel's crystalline energy merged with the restored plants, creating a web of luminescence that pushed back against the creeping void. Nadia's synesthesia translated the conflict into a symphony of colors and tastes, hope tasting like honey gold, fear like bitter copper, and determination like bright silver lightning. Professor Jensen worked frantically at a makeshift control station, combining initiative technology with Kestrel's salvaged devices. "The breach is still expanding," he called out, his voice carrying undertones of exhaustion. "We need something stronger than just energy manipulation." Director Reese burst into the chamber, her usual composure shattered. "What have you done, Jensen?" "This wasn't supposed to," she stopped, staring at Kestrel with a mixture of fear and scientific hunger. "My God! You're what we've been searching for." "Your search has doomed us all," Kestrel replied, his form pulsing with effort as he maintained the energy barrier. "The void doesn't just consume matter, it feeds on the very boundaries between realities. Your attempt to study it has given it a foothold." Nadia stepped between them, her gift showing her threads of possibility in the chaos. "Director, look at the readings. Whatever you hope to contain, it's beyond any human technology. But we've found something better than containment." Through the biodome's panels, they could see initiative personnel evacuating as the darkness above continued to spread. The aurora had become a twisted parody of itself, bleeding colors that shouldn't exist. But in the garden chamber, something extraordinary was happening. The plants touched by Kestrel's power had begun to resonate with Earth's own electromagnetic field, creating patterns that Nadia's synesthesia revealed as complex mathematical harmonies. Professor Jensen's eyes widened as he studied the data. "It's like an immune response, but on a planetary scale. Nadia, your gift isn't just perceiving these patterns, you're amplifying them." Understanding bloomed like dawn in Nadia's mind. She reached for Kestrel's crystalline hand, feeling the familiar cool touch that had become so dear to her. "We're not supposed to fight the void," she said, certainty ringing in her voice. "We're supposed to teach reality how to heal itself." Director Reese moved to the monitoring station, her containment protocols forgotten as scientific curiosity took over. "These energy patterns, they're similar to theoretical models of cellular repair, but on a quantum level. My people thought we could defeat the void hunger with walls of crystal and weapons of light, Kestrel said, his voice carrying harmonics of newfound hope. We never considered that the answer might lie in helping worlds develop their own resistance. Working together, human scientists and crystalline scholar, government director and independent researcher, they began to understand. The garden wasn't just a hiding place or a laboratory. It was a template, showing how different forms of life could strengthen each other. Every plant Kestrel had restored now acted as a resonator, amplifying Earth's natural defenses. Through her synesthesia, Nadia could taste the moment the balance shifted. The discordant flavors of the void began to retreat, replaced by something new, a harmony of organic and crystalline energy that sang of life's persistence. The breach above the biodome started to shrink, reality knitting itself back together with newfound strength. We need to share this, Professor Jensen said, looking at Director Reese. Not as a weapon or a tool for control, but as knowledge that could save countless worlds. Reese studied the readings for a long moment, then slowly nodded. The initiative was founded to protect Earth from extraordinary threats. Maybe it's time we reconsidered what protection really means. As the Arctic night slowly returned to normal outside, Nadia felt Kestrel's gratitude and affection flowing through their joined hands. They had created more than just a defense against the darkness. They had built a bridge between species, between ways of seeing and understanding the universe. The garden chamber glowed with combined light, Earth's aurora dancing with Kestrel's crystalline energy, all of it translated through Nadia's unique perception into a symphony of hope. This was just the beginning. Together, they would teach others what they had learned in this hidden place, that the strongest barriers against darkness are built not of walls and weapons, but of trust and shared understanding. 1 year later, the biodome had transformed from a failed experiment into humanity's first interspecies research center. The garden chamber where they had once fought the void now served as a lecture hall, its restored plants thriving under the combined care of earth science and crystalline wisdom. Nadia stood at its center, her synesthesia translating the buzz of excitement from the gathered audience into sparkles of silver and gold. The key to dimensional stability isn't isolation or force, she explained, as Kestrel demonstrated by touching a nearby plant, making its energy patterns visible to all. It's creating networks of resilience, living barriers that can adapt and grow stronger. Her gift showed her the threads of connection spreading from person to person, a web of understanding that tasted like morning dew. Professor Jensen, now the center's head of xenobiology, added his own insights about how Earth's biosphere was already showing signs of adaptation. More humans were being born with gifts like Nadia's, not mutations, but evolutionary responses to a changing cosmos. Director Reese, who had become their strongest ally within the Reformed Initiative, helped translate these discoveries into practical applications. But it was Kestrel who held the audience spellbound, his crystalline form refracting the Arctic sunlight as he shared the story of his lost world. Lamaria fell because we tried to stand alone, he said, his voice carrying harmonics of hard-won wisdom. Earth will survive because you have chosen a different path. After the lecture, Nadia found Kestrel in their private garden, a small chamber where crystal flowers grew alongside earth plants in perfect symbiosis. His form rippled with joy as she approached, and her synesthesia painted his emotions in shades of rose and azure. The quantum readings from the Australian outpost are promising, she said, settling beside him. The techniques we developed here are helping them establish their own dimensional stabilization field. Soon we'll have a global network. And not just on Earth, Kestrel added, producing a small crystal that pulsed with distant signals. Other survivors from Lamaria have begun to emerge from hiding. Your world's example gives them hope, shows them that resistance against the void is possible through cooperation rather than isolation. Their quiet moment was interrupted by Professor Jensen's arrival, his face alight with excitement. The Deep Space Array just picked up something remarkable, he said, holding out a tablet. It appears to be a crystalline seed ship, similar to Kestrel's escape pod but much larger. And it's carrying survivors from other worlds affected by the void hunger. Nadia's gift translated the signal patterns into tastes of starlight and colors beyond human words. "They're looking for refuge," she said, understanding flowing through her enhanced perception. "They detected our stabilization field and recognized it as a sign of hope." "More than that," Kestrel said softly, reading the crystalline frequencies. "They bring knowledge from their own worlds, different approaches to dimensional healing that could complement what we've learned here." His form brightened with emotion. "We're not just saving Earth anymore. We're creating a network of worlds, each contributing to the other's survival." Director Reese joined them, her former rigidity replaced by determined optimism. "The initiative space program is at your disposal," she offered. "We can arrange a safe landing, help establish first contact protocols." "No protocols," Nadia interrupted gently. "No containment procedures. Let's welcome them the way you finally welcomed Kestrel, as allies and teachers." Her synesthesia showed her possibility spreading like dawn across the stars, tasting of hope and renewal. As they prepared to receive Earth's newest refugees, Nadia reflected on how far they'd come from that first snowy night when a crystalline scholar fell from her aurora-lit sky. Their garden had grown into something far greater than a simple haven. It had become a seed of change that would spread across the galaxy. The void still hunted between the stars, but it no longer found isolated worlds easy to devour. Instead, it encountered an ever-growing network of life, each world strengthening the others, each species contributing its unique gifts to the whole. Earth's skies now danced with new colors as human science merged with crystalline wisdom and a dozen other forms of knowledge, creating defenses that grew stronger with each passing day. In their private garden, Nadia took Kestrel's hand, feeling the familiar resonance between them, a bridge between worlds that had become something deeper, more personal. Together they had proven that life's greatest strength lies not in walls or weapons, but in the courage to reach across the darkness and forge connections that even the void cannot break. Above them, the aurora painted the Arctic sky with Earth's own colors, while crystalline flowers chimed in harmony with native blooms. Their garden had become more than a sanctuary or a symbol, it was a promise to all the worlds in the darkness. No one had to face the void alone.